required of them to take up arms against their brethren. Forbid it, Lord, God forbid. Forbid it, Lord, God forbid, that those who have succored most holy and breast should thirst for American blood. Our voice was heard in Roxbury, which echoed through the continent, Is Boston my dear town? Is it my native place? For since their calamity I do earnestly remember it still. I do earnestly remember it still. If I forget thee, yea, if I do not remember thee, then let my numbers cease to flow, then be my muse unkind. Then let my tongue forget to move and never be confined. Let horrid jargon split the air and bind my nerves asunder. Let hateful discord greet my ear as terrible as thunder. Let harmony be banished, hence and consonants depart. Let dissonance erect her throne and reign within my heart. If I forget thee, yea, if I do not remember thee, then let my numbers cease to flow, then be my news unkind. Then let my tongue forget to move and never be confined. Let horrid jargon split the air and bind my nerves asunder. Let hateful discord greet my ear as terrible as thunder. Let harmony be banished, hence and consonants depart. Let dissonance erect her throne and reign within my heart.
What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do at this point? What? I'm lost for words. I don't know what to do. I got 5 boys. I don't know what. I ain't got nothing to tell them no more. You can't walk away no more. What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do at this point? What? I'm lost for words. I don't know what to do. I got 5 boys. I don't know what. I ain't got nothing to tell them no more. You can't walk.
Tell them not to stab people. Good morning, Rise and Freedom. Last show this week. That's right, Drew Van Runkle. Good morning, Byron. Thank you for your generosity, brother. We appreciate you very much. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I am your host, Austin Peterson. We're glad and thankful to have you here with us today. We got a really spicy one for you. We're going to drop the bomb, and then we're going to walk away. Drop the bomb, and then walk away. It's time to rise in freedom. Seattle just spent $465,000 on 4 public toilets that play ambient music and spray floral perfume. so that visiting FIFA soccer fans don't have to smell the complete collapse of the American city. Local officials literally cut a ribbon of Charmin toilet paper to celebrate the fact that they installed a polite robot voice in the ceiling to welcome the junkies into a taxpayer-funded drug den. Progressive governance in this country has become nothing more than stage management with a social work vocabulary and long, sharp nails. And that's exactly what happens when our civilization loses the will to defend itself and we decide to just hang tropical wallpaper over the rot. Now, we see this exact same kind of performative cowardice on the global stage every day when the United Nations gathers in their green marbled rooms to lecture the free nations of the world about morality while making accommodations for every tin pot dictator that they have. You know, they'll actively seat dictators who will execute dissidents on their human rights councils and then condemn the only free allies that we have left in the world. Argentine President Javier Milei had to walk into that supranational swamp just to remind them that Israel remains the only reason-based republic in the Middle East holding the line against actual barbarism. Yet somehow, even the American liberty movement has become infected by the United Nations theatrical nonsense and taken over by the third worldist mentality. So-called individualists in this country now romanticize jihadists and parrot Kremlin state media because they've traded the Enlightenment for cheap internet outrage and fascist aesthetics. Libertarians in the United States have completely forgot that Ayn Rand explicitly warned us to support civilized men when they are forced to fight savages. You cannot claim to champion private property while cheering for a theocratic death cult that targets innocent families in order to advance a medieval caliphate. True neutrality does not exist when one side builds markets and the other side builds terror tunnels. We are watching the systematic dismantling of the Western tradition, whether it's the fentanyl-stained sidewalks of Pioneer Square, all the way to the federal surveillance state spying on our kitchen table. The constitutional protections written by James Madison are currently being shredded by intelligence agencies using Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. They use this to vacuum up private communications of millions of ordinary citizens without a shred of probable cause. Judge Andrew Napolitano is here today to expose that domestic spying operation, while Tom Pappert joins us at 8:30 to break down Thomas Massie's campaign to reinvestigate the never-before-investigated USS Liberty attack. And we're going to talk about it without turning it into a paranoid conspiracy carnival. We're going to draw a hard line between the people who want to preserve this republic and honor the sailors who died, and the cowards who just want to manage our decline. If you want to support this show this morning, you can drop 7,000 shekels. No, you don't get the $7,000 from the IDF directly. They make you post memes and rage bait. You have to get Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk to monetize you first, and then the Israeli soldiers give you the memes that you post to rage bait the anti-Zionists, and then you get the 7,000 shekels. Oh, God. Yeah, you know the Jews. They're known for their profligacy. All right, picture this, guys. Pioneer Square in Seattle on May 15th. So Katie Wilson, the mayor, she walked to a podium holding scissors, and I'm pretty sure I've got a picture of it here somewhere. Yeah, here she is. Mayor Katie Wilson holding a pair of scissors. There's the ceremonial ribbon right there. Only Seattle has reached a stage of civilization where the ribbon is a roll of Charmin toilet paper. She cuts the toilet paper, steps inside. She makes the official first flush in front of city officials and local press, and of course the crowd applauds. They applaud the flush. Grown adults in public on camera applauding a flush. And this is the kind of enthusiasm that most cities will reserve for like a bridge opening or maybe a war memorial or something. And the room laughs, but Wilson joked that this is the city's number one and number two priority, which is funny for 7-year-olds. So Seattle has installed 4 new public restrooms through a company called Throne Labs.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
So actual adults, functioning adults somehow, heard the name of that. They decided taxpayers would respect it. So they decided to go with that. Throne Labs. So each unit has flush toilets, running water, solar lighting, ambient music, tropical wallpaper. Who still uses wallpaper? And flowery fragrance is pumped through the ceiling. Now, when the door opens, a voice says, "Welcome to Throne." And you get in by QR code or a phone app or a text. And it costs $116,000 per unit. So $465,000 for all four of these. Seattle right now is $480 million in debt. And the units close at 10 p.m. because the QR code and the tropical wallpaper and the ceiling perfume, they cannot handle Pioneer Square after dark. Because after dark in this locale, the future of urban restroom innovation will lock the door because of the type of people that show up after dark in this place. Throne Labs is calling this a very strong feature. Now, 25 years ago, Seattle tried this. Actually, before, they had automated self-cleaning toilets downtown, and they made a big investment in this. And the huge announcement, too, there was no toilet paper cutting ceremony at the time. But there was a big announcement, big investment, and within months, of course, they became drug dens. So the city pulled the program and then listed the units on eBay. Used public toilets, government property, and the buyer pays shipping. Seattle got $12,000 back on a multi-million-dollar program, of course. $12,000. So that was the city's tuition payment to reality. But now all of the new people, of course, skip that class. So the next generation comes in. This time it'll be different. Tropical wallpaper, mood music, solar, right, and a welcoming voice. The unit outside Lumen Field was closed before noon on opening day. 2 weeks later, somebody smashed the window on a second unit. Throne Labs said that the fast repair proved the monitoring system was working as designed. And the city says, oh, this is a promising start, because of course they did. When your public safety plan is a bathroom that introduces itself, a smashed window counts as user engagement. That's what they call it. I'm a chud, I'm a chud, I'm a fat little chud. So these units have running water, a locking door, and privacy. And they're placed in a neighborhood where street crews have to handle 65 incidents of human waste every single week. Running water inside a self-contained room is more than a bathroom feature there for them. People were bathing in these units, of course, in the first week. Seattle spent $116,000 on a public shower. They put a robot voice in the ceiling, and then they act confused when human beings went in there and started showering. So fentanyl killed more than 1,000 King County residents in 2023. Microsoft moved their biggest developer conference to Las Vegas because the attendees complained about open-air drug use outside the convention center here. The tent encampments show up in tourist photographs with the Space Needle. So if you go to Google, you will see, and you look at this neighborhood, you can see the tent cities on Google Earth. June 15th, the World Cup, it just put a date on the calendar when 25 years of looking away needed a prop that could be photographed. So the prop has tropical wallpaper and perfume. The prop says, "Welcome to Throne." Seattle tried automated toilets. They watched them turn into drug dens, sold them on eBay, and then returned a generation later and said, "This time it will be different." It's almost 10 poops a day, yes. Now, while Throne Labs was boarding up that window, the Katie Wilson's that pictured there, her outreach teams were clearing the same encampments that her campaign had promised to stop clearing. So Wilson won the 2025 mayoral race, promising to end Seattle's sweep policy. They promised more shelter, less removal, compassion over enforcement, and the voters were sold on this big moral transformation that was going to happen. And then the World Cup came. June 15th started breathing down City Hall's neck, and the sweep teams went out. She had promised 500 new shelter units before kickoff. A city memo found that even if all the necessary leases had been signed by mid-April, and of course they hadn't, the earliest that the remaining units could have opened was July 14th. And the last Seattle match ends before that. So on the city's own internal math, the shelter program would miss the tournament that it was built around. They promised 500, they got 75. And Wilson described the World Cup as just kind of a good goalpost. And she missed that goalpost by 425 units, and then they moved the goalpost. So the 75 units that did open, of course, come with their own policy miracle. Drug use is allowed inside, officially, in writing. This is not a case of a staff member who's just looking the other way, or maybe a hard situation that's being handled with discretion. The program allows this. There's no treatment component, no sobriety intake. Just come in, close the door, and do your drugs. Do your fentanyl, and then poop 20 times outside of the place where you're supposed to poop. They poop everywhere but the place they're supposed to poop. So, of course, the question was not how to get people stable or sober or employed and reconnected to life. They don't care about that. The question was how to get people off the block before the cameras from 60 countries arrive. That's what they care about. So the press release that they had to put out on this one, you know, I'm sure looked phenomenal. But the actual reality is broken, smashed doors, open air drug use, poop everywhere. And of course, Mayor Katie Wilson says this is progress. So the 425 people whose units never opened went somewhere. They went to Chinatown International District and Beacon Hill. And reporting from those neighborhoods described dozens of people in public parks smoking fentanyl, starting fires to stay warm. This is an American city. The residents are describing this as a lawless playground. So Chinatown got the overflow from the Lumen field sweep. One block gets cleaned for FIFA, and then another block absorbs the human cost. So they just moved them off to a separate area. Back in May, the rumors were spreading that Wilson was putting people on Washington state ferries to Bremerton, and they were busing them east of the Cascades to clear the city before the kickoff. And this rumor actually spread far enough that the Moses Lake Police Department, which is 300 miles from Seattle, this is a population of like 23,000. They published a Facebook statement saying they had found no evidence of it in their city. So picture that officer at his desk in Moses Lake. He's typing a formal response to Seattle's homeless policy on the department's official Facebook page. So that is the blast radius of Seattle's failure. Wilson had been mayor for less than a year. Seattle had not elected a Republican mayor since 1969. She inherited a city that was shaped by 57 years of single party rule. Every encampment, every open air drug scene in this town, every business owner who they've quit calling the police, every resident who learned to step over human waste on the way to work. All of this came from decisions made over decades by people who never had to fear a real opposition party.
So again, the model here is low barrier, high support. So we are not requiring treatment for people entering this, and this is really an evidence-based model that we've seen be successful. And so basically you're bringing people in knowing that the process of recovery is really complicated and difficult, and so we're not demanding that people be, abstinent when they enter this village, but there are going to be there's kind of repeated efforts to kind of help people along into treatment. So that treatment will always be available and encouraged.
So when Atlanta hosted the 1996, rest in peace, Nancy Mace there. I know you're happy today, Camellia. See that? There's a lot of reasons to support Donald Trump, isn't there? We'll talk about that a little bit later, perhaps. So when Atlanta hosted the 1996 Summer Olympics, the city rounded up approximately 9,000 homeless people and loaded some of these people into a detention center built for the occasion. And they handed the others a one-way bus ticket out of town. And they gave the police operation for this a name so absurd that it sounds like it got a screenwriter fired for being too obvious. Operation Olympus. So they named the homeless roundup that they did for this Olympics after the mountain where the gods live. So Zeus looked down on downtown Atlanta, saw the guys sleeping on the concrete, and requested municipal code enforcement. And 9,000 people they moved out of sight. They had 3 weeks of global television protected. So beyond the arrests that were made and the bus tickets, Atlanta used these games to tear down public housing and displace 30,000 low-income families. The land became athlete housing. Then they became middle-class condos. Parks were gentrified. Benches were redesigned to prevent sleeping. So the city at the time reorganized around one civic command: make poverty invisible until the outside audience leaves. And then the Olympic flame went out and the cameras left and the city kept the scars, because 30 years later, Atlanta is hosting the FIFA World Cup 1 mile from that same stadium. And dozens of people were camped on a downtown sidewalk in May waiting for a shelter to open. So sleeping bags are out there on the concrete, face masks against the afternoon sun, empty mini liquor bottles on the ground. You've got a boombox, I'm sure, playing Jay-Z. This can't be right. There's got to be more. 9,000 people were detained, 30,000 displaced, $185 million in the current program. A reporter had tracked down the CEO of Partners for Home. This is a woman whose job it was to end homelessness in Atlanta, and they asked her how it was going. And she said, there will always be homeless people on our streets, more than likely, unfortunately. Well, geez, that's almost a direct quote from Jesus Christ of Nazareth. The poor you will always have with you. Well, that's true, Jesus. But this is the way that these people operate. Because in the 2024 Paris Olympics, France bussed migrants out until the games ended and then brought them back deliberately after. Why would you bring them back? Chicago cleared out its biggest encampment before the DNC. So this is the Democratic playbook, that the leftist playbook of the people who run these cities. The audience arrives, the human misery gets moved. The audience leaves, the human misery returns. The city will name the operation something like Operation Olympus or whatever, and then they'll wait for the next mega event to do what residents have been begging them to do for years, or what Spencer Pratt promised to do in Los Angeles, for which they run him out of town. Looking at you. Police, but the problem, of course, with this is that it just goes to show how much the people in charge in this country and in many of these cities don't give a crap about the people who live here. In 1968, the Mexican government, this happens all over the world, they called its Olympics Los Juegos de la Paz. This is the Games of Peace. And shop owners across Mexico City got Dove stickers for their windows. And it was a beautiful campaign, and it looked beautiful on television. But behind those doves, thousands of poor neighborhoods outside the city had no electricity. Students gathered to protest the gap between stadiums for the world and the darkness that they had at home. The government sent in the military, of course, and killed hundreds of people. 10 days later, the games opened on schedule, and the doves were in the windows, and they acted like nothing had happened. Now, Mexico is a co-host of the World Cup, and the Estadio Azteca is going to look magnificent on camera because they'll, of course, use the cameras to only point at what they want you to see and what the producers want you to feel. So they're going to leave out, of course, what the government needs hidden. They're not going to pan to the right to see all these homeless encampments and people who have no power or are starving and doing drugs at open air markets. In 1968, the price, of course, for this was paid by students. In 1996, in Atlanta, it was paid by the 9,000 people who were swept into detention and given the bus tickets out of town. Now in 2026, it's being paid by residents of Chinatown who are going to receive the overflow from a stadium sweep that they were promised was not going to happen from Katie Miller's campaign. So the accountability never arrives for these people, whether it's Seattle or Atlanta or Dallas. And what is the one thread in these cities is that they have been under single-party governance for decades. And these conditions didn't just fall from the sky. It's because of what these people decide to enforce, when they decide to enforce the law. The left, they decide which neighborhoods are going to absorb the cost of the failure. And then when the cameras show up, the camp gets moved to a block of people that they don't like. It's like, so Chinatown, we don't care about the people in Chinatown, so let's move all these homeless people into Chinatown. If you're just tuning in the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. you're just tuning into the show right now, we're glad to have you here. Don't forget, guys, click that like button. And if today is the first time that you've ever watched the Wake Up America show, we'd love to have you be a regular guest. It's totally free to click the follow button. And when you click the follow button, guys, you'll get a notification whenever this show goes live. And our show schedule is Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. Just a quick FYI for those who are not aware, today is going to be the last day of the show this week because we're doing a little vacation. So if people tomorrow are in the Discord saying, what's happened to the show? I'll try to remember to make a quick little post over there. Maybe Steffi or somebody could do it for us. But we will have no Wake Up America show tomorrow or on Friday. And of course, no Freedom Arcade. So if you guys want to support the show, click the like button, click the follow button. It's totally free. If you want to see our bonus content, this is your last chance to see our amazing mini documentaries that we've produced for you. If you want to see the bonus content this week, then all you have to do is do what Byron Norris and let's see who else has been doing. I forget that I can actually see all this again now. Byron Norris and Drew Van Ronkel with 7,000 shekels, which equals the exchange rate is $1. But if you love America and you want to support the Wake Up America show, then head on over to forlibertyshop.com during the Wake Up America show live stream. If you buy something from the Grift shop over at forlibertyshop.com during the live show, then it all adds up to our unlockables. If we raise $100 during the live show, then you'll unlock our mini documentary, which you can watch instead of commercials, which is way more fun. So head on over to forlibertyshop.com this morning. The America 76 250 years t-shirt has been selling like crazy. Brad DM'd me yesterday. He's like, what's going on? Why are all these people buying this shirt? And I'm just like, boy, everybody loves it. It's beautiful. This is definitely one of our hit designs, and I ordered one for myself yesterday, and I can't wait to get it. So if you want to get one too, head on over to forlibertyshop.com. There's still time for you guys to get this before the 4th of July. So my recommendation to you is to buy it today, though, so that you get it in time for your 4th of July 250-year celebration. So head on over this morning to forlibertyshop.com. Rat-pop-pop. Rat-ta-ta-ta. We're going to take a quick little break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about the Libertarian case for Israel. I know. You're already mad. Stay mad, haters. We'll be right back. It's the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than
well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian. And
always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
The left in America tells us not to have kids to save the planet, but in Cuba, they stopped having kids because the state destroyed the earth.
Collectivism doesn't create justice. It creates shortages, corruption, and power for the few. I've not just seen it, I've lived it. My family escaped it. Now, the same failed ideas are being sold to a new generation. I'm here to expose the lie and defend liberty. From Cuba to Argentina to the United States, the freedom movement is rising. Cafecito Libre is the exile voice of economic truth. Cafecito Libre, premiering March 3rd as part of the For Liberty Network, only on Rumble.
Hark! I've discovered a brew so bold, 'twill ignite the spirit of liberty. This is not merely coffee, 'tis the very essence of American boldness. Give me coffee, or give me death. Go to For Liberty Shop to procure yours now.
And abhorrent Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has already cost the lives of more than 300,000 people, leaving over 1 million injured in the process. An organization that, instead of addressing these conflicts, invests time and effort in imposing on poor countries how and what they should produce, who they should associate with, what they should eat, and what they should believe, how it intends to dictate the present pact of the future. This long list of errors and contradictions has not been without consequence, as it has led to a loss of credibility for the United Nations among the citizens of the free world and has distorted its functions. That is why I want to issue a warning. We are facing an end of a cycle. Collectivism and the moral posturing of the UOC agenda have collided with reality and no longer have credible solutions to offer for the real problems of the world. In fact, they never did. If the 2030 agenda has failed, as its own promoters acknowledge, the response should be to ask ourselves if it was not a poorly conceived program from the start, accept that reality, and change course. One cannot insist on persisting in error, doubling down on an agenda that has always failed.
Oh, trust me, Javier, they will double down on a failed agenda. Always the failed agenda. Welcome back to the Wake Up America Show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Way back in the heady days of the early Ron Paul Libertarian movement, I was sitting in a Manhattan restaurant. This was the winter of 2011. I was sitting across from a very clean-cut fellow with his lovely wife, fellow Ron Paul fan, watching him cut into his perfectly seared medium rare steak. The table was filled with anarchists, reactionaries, and self-styled truth tellers who were all playing nice for the evening. And the meal began with a casual discussion about Austrian economics and the non-aggression principle. And I remember that the exact moment that the atmosphere changed. The plates had been cleared for dessert when the man across from me leaned in with a smug smile and casually explained how specific religious demographics control the Federal Reserve. And he expected the revelation to ripple across the table, but all he got was total silence. And I made a joke to ease the tension, but as the evening wore on and the theories just continued to grow darker, and within about an hour, the conversation had devolved into claims about how 9/11 was an inside job and the Holocaust was exaggerated, or it probably didn't happen, but it should have happened. Now, it wasn't a debate. It was really just a ritualistic expression of hatred. And he represented the kind of prototype of the madness that would soon overtake the entire liberty movement as it has today. He was just asking questions, of course, with a smug confidence. This is years before Christopher Cantwell became the crying Nazi, weeping to police after the Charlottesville riots. And I saw the disease metastasize long before it became the public spectacle that it was. The Liberty Movement experienced a genuine blossoming beginning in 2008 during the Iowa caucuses. And me and my fellow Ron Paulers were bold. We were idealistic. I helped to raise over $1 million for Ron Paul as part of the New York City Ron Paul Tea Party meetup. But then, of course, the infamous newsletter controversy surfaced, and we had to deal with the fallout of that. Half of the staff of the people that I was working with, all volunteers, departed after the newsletter controversy broke. The statements that came out about the LA riots had my organization staff heading for the exits in droves. Now, at the time, of course, Ron Paul disavowed the writings and condemned them completely, but the damage was already done among the urban voters of New York City that we lived with. They saw an early crack between the idealistic freedom campaign and the darker paleo-right currents that were swirling around the Lew Rockwell movement. Now, the momentum, of course, collapsed overnight. Volunteers quit, meetup groups splintered, and the movement that had felt like a rebirth at the time suddenly looked like it was infected by old world prejudice. Now, we tried to rebuild the Ron Paul movement in 2012 because this is when the Tea Party crowds had reached their absolute peak and this new populism was being born, and it was a libertarian populism. The Rally for the Republic in Minneapolis served as a prime example of this internal friction. Tucker Carlson actually stormed out of that event. I was there after Jesse Ventura took the stage to claim 9/11 was an inside job. He saw us all as conspiracy paranoids until he realized when you're on the internet, that's where the real money and audience is. Carlson used to police the eccentricities of the movement before he discovered the lucrative market for outrage. So the litmus test for purity in our circles soon became measured by how paranoid you could become. Foreign intrigue, black helicopters have all replaced monetary policy discussions. Any sign of rationalism or rejection of conspiracy theories would result in immediate suspicion from your peers. And this fragmentation has congealed into something far darker now that the Tea Party years have ended. The alt-right sort of morphed into this ball of poison that metastasized into the exact same thing that the left always accused us of being. And I remember the time in 2016, Nick Fuentes interviewed me for my presidential run, and before he abandoned his economic critiques for racial determinism and, of course, civilizational despair. And so-called libertarians also traded their reason and individualism for fatalism and for doom scrolling. Hitler's officially back in style today, and it's hard to blame some of these kids when you take a look at the state of the media and the gynocracy that the United States lives under. There are legitimate critiques that come out. Of course, there's always a grain of truth to every conspiracy theory. And the libertarian to alt-right pipeline that was manufactured by this moral psychosis has replaced rigorous Western thought with this new form of performative, cheap edgelord theater that we're all suffering under. The door knocking that used to happen with libertarians, the grassroots organizing that once defined our movement, have been replaced by keyboard warriors who are obsessed with power hierarchies. So we spent years building credibility to audit the Federal Reserve. We even passed it in the House of Representatives before it was killed by Senator Bernie Sanders at the time. We wanted to restrain the surveillance state and restore jury nullification. And those hard-fought victories, of course, have been completely squandered by people who decided it was easier to blame a global cabal than to do the actual work of political persuasion. The isolationist faction took a beautiful philosophy that was stranded in the clouds, and then they dragged it right down straight into the mud. And they've reduced all of human history to a morality play of oppressors and the oppressed, exactly like the far-left Marxists that they claim to hate. The Howard Zinification of the liberty movement destroyed our ability to differentiate between civilization and barbarism. Every bomb has become a war crime. Trump is a bloodthirsty monster who should be going to jail for his war crimes. Until we vote for him to free Ross and then support him, and then now we're back to he's a bloodthirsty monster, right? It's the head spin, of course, is every other day. Every bomb has become a war crime. Every Western leader has become a colonialist in the twisted theology that is now controlling Libertarianism. These people demand total purity while actively surrendering the enlightened values that make freedom possible in the first place. So Walter Block spent decades as one of the most respected economists in the world before the Mises Institute purged him for applying basic property rights theories to the Middle East. He co-authored the classical liberal case for Israel and exposed the greatest historical fraud of the modern isolationist movement. The Lawberts claim that the Jewish state was built on stolen property, but they completely ignore how land ownership actually works under strict Lockean principles. You cannot steal a barren desert or a malaria-infested swamp that nobody has ever mixed their labor with. By 1948, 71% of the land that became Israel was not privately owned by anyone, but was held by the British Mandate and the Ottoman Empire before them. The Arabs demanded sovereignty over millions of dunams of uncultivatable dirt, while actual Jewish pioneers were draining swamps and purchasing tracts from willing absentee landlords. Yeah, willingly volunteer gave. And the voluntarists hate them. So the numbers on this destroy the oppressor narrative entirely, because in 1944, the Jewish sector generated 67% of the total tax revenue in Palestine, despite being a demographic minority. Their agricultural investment reached 55% of the total value, compared to 44% for the Arab population. They secured 53% of all foreign assets and held 79% of the net banking reserves. So this was not colonial conquest imposed by a military force, as the leftists, communists, socialists, and Lawberts would have you believe. What this was a massive economic development project that was built by individuals who turned a forgotten desert into a thriving civilization. Walter Block proved that under every single metric of classical liberalism, the Jews secured their homeland through voluntary purchase and the sweat of their own labor. But the purity spiral that happened at the Mises Institute has proven that the contemporary liberty movement panics when Western principles are successfully applied in the real world. They would rather defend the illegitimate land claims of Ottoman bureaucrats than acknowledge a free market success story. The entire anti-Zionist industry relies on the myth of ethnic cleansing in order to justify their endless campaign of civilizational despair. If you find something if you find a case where libertarianism actually works in the real world, you have to run as far away from it as possible, especially if there are Jews involved. The Lawberts will scream about mass expropriation while conveniently ignoring the 1 million Jews who were forcibly expelled and robbed by Arab countries during the exact same time period. Israeli new historians like Benny Morris have examined the archives and proved that the vast majority of Arabs who left in 1948 fled voluntarily to clear the way for 5 invading Arab armies. The survivors who stayed behind didn't lose their property, and now those people comprise 20% of the Israeli population with full voting rights and representation in the Knesset. So you can't accuse a nation of apartheid when its minorities serve as judges and doctors, while the surrounding Islamist regimes remain completely Judenrein. The Arab rejection of Israel was never about borders or settlements, because the Hebron massacre slaughtered dozens of Jews in 1929, long before a partition plan ever existed. This conflict remains a core clash between a society that protects private property and a tribal theocracy that celebrates martyrdom. My libertarian nationalist doctrine resolves this by aligning America First interests with civilizational survival. My libertarian nationalism absolutely opposes forcing American taxpayers to fund direct foreign aid packages, but we also aggressively support capitalistic arms sales to strategic allies. Free enterprise allows Israel to vaporize terrorists and deter Iranian expansion without risking a single American soldier. Now, Ayn Rand, of course, understood that supporting civilized nations against savages is not an entangling alliance, but it's a moral imperative. Isolationists who sympathize with Hamas, they do this just to spite the State Department and the CIA, of course. They have surrendered their claim to the Enlightenment entirely. Now, the Mises Institute spent decades posing as the vanguard of Austrian economics before they allowed identitarian rot to destroy their credibility, i.e. Tom Woods. Walter Block was one of their most respected senior fellows until he published The Classical Liberal Case for Israel, using strict property rights to justify the existence of the Jewish state. He penned an open letter asserting that Israel has the right to use overwhelming force to annihilate Hamas, and the Institute responded to him by stripping him of his title. That cowardly purge proves that the seminar crowd panics when liberty actually touches the ground. Look how they behave towards Javier Milei. Rights do not exist in a cloud, and American history proves that they never have. Thomas Jefferson may have warned against entangling alliances, but he actively relied on the French Navy to secure American independence from the British Empire. When Islamic corsairs began attacking Western commerce in the Mediterranean, Jefferson didn't hide in a bunker to debate non-interventionism with the Federation. He sent the U.S. Marines to the shores of Tripoli because he understood that a free market means absolutely nothing if savages can sink your ships with impunity. The modern isolationists ignore this entire history, of course, because they want to force a false choice between neoconservative empire and their paranoid cowardice. You could absolutely put America first while standing with the only ally in the Middle East that actually shares our foundational heritage. Ayn Rand recognized decades ago that Israel was a nation built on reason and modern science, and it's surrounded by regimes that are defined by perpetual tribal warfare, barbarians. My libertarian nationalist doctrine reflects this exact historical reality by drawing a massive distinction between supporting allies and robbing citizens. I completely oppose direct taxpayer foreign aid to any nation because American workers should never be forced to fund conflicts overseas. We do fully support, though, unrestricted capitalistic arms sales to civilized outposts because free enterprise allows those nations to defend themselves. Every single alliance must serve the security of the American citizen first, but civilization remains a team sport. If your version of America First includes Hamas sympathizers and you're being endorsed by the Young Turks or Russian propagandists, if Russia Today covers you favorably, then you've forgotten America entirely. I stand with nations that build markets and uphold the rule of law because I hope Israel wins, and I refuse to apologize for Western progress.
A right to a separate state?
Well,
Mr. Jum has been talking about human rights.
Well, I think that no, I don't think they do, but I think that it's quite instructive that the Palestinians who are invoking the right of self-determination, which is an attribute for separate nations, themselves are the ones who define themselves as part of the Arab nation. Now, no one is denying that there are Palestinian Arabs. There's a very distinguished Palestinian Arab sitting right next to me. But the Palestinians themselves, in the Palestinian National Covenant, the very first article, say that the people of Palestine, quote, are part of the Arab nation. Well, let's look at the Arab nation. It has 21 states, an area roughly the size of the United States, and 1/6 of the entire world's wealth. Now, add to that the fact that there already exists a Palestinian state, and that is Jordan, 60% of whose population is Palestinian. I think it's quite interesting that Yasser Arafat and King Hussein, who are bitter enemies, agree on one thing, that Jordan is a Palestinian state. So what we're talking about is a demand for a 22nd Arab state and a second Palestinian state.
What should be done?
That is young Ben Natai.
When you look at the photographs.
Speaking of Walter Block, we will have Professor Walter Block on this show in the coming weeks. So next week we'll have Professor Walter Block joining us live to discuss this topic. So look forward to him next week. Coming up here in a little bit less than 10 minutes, we're going to speak to Judge Andrew Napolitano about Section 702 FISA. Is mass surveillance the norm and privacy going to be, well, pretty much gone? We'll talk about that at 8 a.m. Central on the Wake Up America show. At 8:30 a.m. on the Wake Up America show, we're going to speak to Tom Pappert about the USS Liberty. Oh, yes. And all that. But before that, a quick word from our sponsors, guys. If you watched Milei walk in the United States, defend Israeli sovereignty and Western civilization, then it should remind you of something pretty basic, that if you are a rights-based Western civilizationist, then the West is under threat. And the dollar, of course, is under pressure. Governments are printing money like they found a cheat code. And too many Americans have their entire life and their entire finances locked into one country. Now, I'm not saying that you should become an expat and that you should leave the United States. I'm staying here, and I think that we should stay here and fight. But I do think that you should be allowed to, and you should be informed about how to take advantage of the international monetary system so that you're not locked into one currency in one country. Most people, they only ever hold dollars. Maybe they hold some Bitcoin. But there are some financial strategies that involve diversification on the international scene that regular people like ourselves, you don't have to have Mitt Romney or Peter Thiel money in order to take advantage of them. And that's why I want you guys to get my friend's Expat Money's free report. It's free. It's no cost. Just go to expatmoney.com/World War III and download the free report. It's going to walk you through what you need to think about before the next crisis hits. If you've thought about diversifying into different currencies, if you've thought about getting second residencies, if you've thought about having options, like some of the people that I speak to on my phone calls during the day, they absolutely are looking for these kinds of options. So I just tell them, go to my sponsor, expatmoney.com, World War III. Yes, they pay me to say that, but yes, I do choose my sponsors because I don't have to, because I can always just sell my own stuff. I'm happy to just sell my own t-shirts if I don't agree with the sponsor, but I've worked with these guys for a long time and I know they have a lot of really good financial strategies. So head to expatmoney.com/World War III, get the free report. That's expatmoney.com/World War III. Get your free report now, right now. Do it. And speaking of t-shirts, why don't you head on over to the Grift Shop? Help us to unlock the bonus content, guys. Head on over to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number, forlibertyshop.com. And when you do, guys, check out all of our amazing 250th anniversary merch. The America 76, 250 years. I think it's kind of gone viral at this point. We've sold dozens of these things. People love those, as well as the 250th anniversary embroidered American flag polo. I was tempted to take both my black and my white polo on vacation. I just decided not to because I'm like, it's the same shirt, but maybe it would look odd to show up with two of the same shirts. But so I'm bringing my white one with me on vacation. And of course, because I have a 2-year-old daughter, almost 2-year-old, it's already got a stain on it. So that's why I've got the black shirt. The black shirt. 250th anniversary embroidered American flag polo shirt. You can support America first without having to give up on civilization. That's forlibertyshop.com. When we come back, and Judge Andrew Napolitano, the federal government is spying on you, not theoretically, not someday. right now, and the law that's supposed to prevent it is expiring this month. He'll be here with us on the Wake Up America show when we get back, and Tom Pappert on the USS Liberty at 8:30. So Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
Hark! I've discovered a brew so bold, 'twill ignite the spirit of liberty. This is not merely coffee, 'tis the very essence of American boldness. Give me coffee, or give me death. Go to 4 Liberty Shop to procure yours now.
"'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from 4 Liberty Shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at 4libertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again. George Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them." Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at 4libertyshop.com.
In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty.
Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Good morning. It's time to rise and freedom. I'm glad and thankful to have you here today. Click the like button if you haven't already. If today is your first time watching the Wake Up America show, we would love to have you be a regular guest. Click the follow button and you'll get notifications whenever you go live. Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act expires this month. Now, this was sold to the American people as a tool that was used to spy on foreign terrorists. But according to my next guest, it's been used as something else entirely, as a legal fig leaf to vacuum up the private communications of millions of ordinary Americans with no warrant, no probable cause, and no meaningful oversight. Judge Andrew Napolitano is a former New Jersey Superior Court judge, a constitutional scholar, and he's someone who's been sounding this alarm for decades. Judge Andrew Napolitano, welcome back to the Wake Up America show. It's good to see you again, friend.
Austin, I feel like I'm shoveling against the tide when it comes to this. That's why I entitled my piece this week "A Requiem for Privacy."
Do you think that privacy is just well and truly dead, Judge?
Close to it. When you look at the attitude of the Congress and the willingness of the executive branch to look the other way. I mean, President Reagan, of all people. I didn't put this in the column, but this is what the intelligence community used. Signed a executive order 12333, so 12,333 is the number of the order, with very, very vague language in it about the duty to spy. And the intelligence community uses that as its authority to bypass the Constitution, to bypass the statutes, and to bypass the FISA court. So FISA is just a fig leaf, and 702 is just a fig leaf to make it look like the American spies are spying on foreigners. In reality, they're spying on Americans all the time, without warrants, using and abusing federal judges, duping them into thinking that they're signing warrants that will be complied with. The reason I said the 702 expires this week or this month, it actually expires tomorrow, but it has a built-in 14-day extender. So whenever it expires, it goes for another 2 weeks if both the House and the Senate don't vote to pass it. They'll vote to pass it because they're terrified of what the intelligence community knows about them. The intelligence community's great weapon is fear.
Now, Judge, in your column, you write, you use the term fig leaf. You call 702 a fig leaf, which a lot of people probably don't understand what that means. The government says that they only target foreign persons on foreign soil, but you're saying that is not what is actually happening. So explain the gap between what the law says and what it's being used for.
So if you call a hotel in Rome to reserve a hotel room, you're an American speaking to a foreign person. Now, the original statute said foreign agent. The FISA court has expanded that to mean foreign person. Yes, you spoke to a foreign person, a hotel clerk at a hotel in Rome, and an absolutely normal, utterly benign conversation. But under the interpretations of the FISA court, secret interpretations that we only know about because of former NSA agents who've revealed them, you can now be spied on without suspicion, without probable cause, and without a warrant. And that spying on you can go out to the 6th degree. So you can talk to A, and A can be spied on. A can talk to B, and B can be spied on, et cetera, out to the 6th degree. All of this, DOJ lawyers and NSA spies persuading a court with no opposition in it, no opposition. This is remnant of Stalin's courts in the 30s, no opposition there, to permit these extensions. So the government spies on everybody all the time, whether 702 is extended or not. But 702 has come to stand for this battle between constitutionalists and authoritarians. I say constitutionalists because some of the people in the battle are true libertarians like you and I, and some are Bernie Sanders types. So I'm going to call them constitutionalists because we don't agree on many things, but we do agree that the Constitution does not permit warrantless searches.
Now, Judge, before 9/11, there seems to be this, I would call it a mythology, that before 9/11 that there was a wall between surveillance and law enforcement. But isn't it the case, Judge, that the government has been unconstitutionally spying on us even before this kind of mass surveillance technology existed?
I don't know the answer to that. I do know that the wall, at least theoretically, existed and was actually defended by the DOJ. But after 9/11, the Patriot Act abolished the wall. And that, of course, has frustrated federal judges who would say to prosecutors, where did you get this from? So the prosecutor then is not lying, because the prosecutor is relating what other prosecutors have told him. There's obviously lying going on, but not in the federal courtroom. It's called parallel construction. It's where the government has acquired evidence unlawfully, but it finds some subterfuge, some lawful means with which to dupe the courts and defense counsel to get this evidence in. So if the feds are spying on the Russian embassy and there's a janitor or a guy who claims to be a janitor, but he's really a KGB agent in there trying to entice an American to work for him by giving the American cocaine, can that evidence be used against the American, and can it be used against the Russian? Because they now have a telephone recording of a criminal transaction. When the wall existed, the answer was no. After the wall between surveillance, national security, and law enforcement, the answer is yes, even though that conversation would never pass muster under traditional Fourth Amendment jurisprudence. So what they would do is wait for the transaction to take place and then arrest these people and not reveal how they knew to arrest them. By the time they arrested them, they had the drugs there. They cannot introduce the tape recording of the conversation into a courtroom. No court would permit it because it was obtained outside the Fourth Amendment.
Judge, have there been cases that you could cite or recall offhand of American citizens who had been unconstitutionally spied on through these programs that were able to prove it in court and maybe even be able to receive compensation because the government very clearly took away their rights in these cases?
It doesn't get that far. Either the Americans are terrified or they're paid money to settle it. It will never get to a federal judge. Just like this case involving the CIA agent with the $400 million in gold, they cannot try that case without enormous embarrassment to the CIA and to the Trump administration. So how this guy could have spent $400 million and brought the gold into his house.
Well, wasn't the situation that there is some kind of a program where the CIA can set itself up so that even the higher ups at the CIA wouldn't they're legally they're not allowed to know, meaning that
correct.
CIA,
but they are never ever going to acknowledge that in a public courtroom.
Imagine being a CIA agent and figuring out that you can just steal what was it, $4 million worth of gold bars.
$400
million. Oh my God.
Yes.
Judge, you cited a FISA warrant that authorized the seizure of telephone records for all Verizon customers, 115 million people, no probable cause. So under what legal theory does that survive the Fourth Amendment? What do they say? What's the argument that they make for them being able to do that?
Well, we don't know because the FISA court meets in secret, but somebody upset with this posted the order signed by a federal judge in Florida, a judge who was assigned to the FISA court. The FISA court has 13 federal judges on it, and they rotate through. So one of them is always in D.C., but because they have courtrooms and assignments back home, they go to D.C. for 3 or 4 week periods, and then they're replaced by somebody else. The judges are frisked on their way into the courtroom and frisked on their way out. To me, this is inconceivable, but this is what happens. And no records are available. So in terms of the 115 million, nobody would know it unless they were prosecuted for something and the something emanated from the phone records. Then the government would have to explain how they got the phone records.
Judge, you write that 702 is going to keep running until we have a president to stop it. And then you add 2 words, and survives. That's a pretty loaded phrase, Judge. What are you really saying there?
A president would be killed. A president would be killed by the intelligence community before they would allow him to put them out of business.
Well, I mean,
simple as that. We're dealing with very, very, very dangerous people who are not accustomed to having their power curtailed. Far worse than anything Reagan could ever have imagined with the 12-333 executive order. Far worse than it was when Snowden revealed all of this. It's a separate government now. It's a separate military. They lie, they steal, they cheat, they kill, they get away with it. They steal $400 million and get away with it.
Judge, we've had conversations about the need for spying and intelligence agencies before. You've said, I think, on this show that you would have, if you were president of the United States, you would have a spy agency, but that you'd basically hit the reset button on the CIA as it wills. The CIA, their original mission statement was that they were only supposed to operate outside of the United States. They were not supposed to operate here domestically. So how could you, as a president, without being killed, sort of reformulate the CIA, noting that the original mission as it was planned, they weren't able to keep this monster under wraps? How could any president keep this kind of monster under wraps?
Well, you'd have to fire 95% of the intelligence community and hire people who think the way you and I do. You'd have to have the old Tulsi Gabbard, not the new one, running it. You couldn't have people who became stenographers for the Mossad, which is what the intelligence people that come on my show call John Ratcliffe. You have to have an entirely different mindset that believes that the Fourth Amendment means what it says. That would bring about a radical change. You'd have to have somebody like Thomas Massie in charge of the intelligence community.
Judge Andrew Napolitano joins us live here on the Wake Up America show. Judge, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Trump administration and their push to renew all of these national monuments. The libertarian in me is always like, well, they're spending millions of dollars of government spending, but then, the person who loves beautiful aesthetics, and I know you love beautiful aesthetics, Judge, thinks that the national capital for a country as great as the United States should not be run down, overrun with homeless people, spray paint and graffiti on monuments like the Columbus. I don't know if you've seen the Columbus fountain since they renewed it or restored it, but from the videos I've seen, it's beautiful. Is that the proper role of government for it to engage in those kinds of beautification projects?
Well, you say the proper role of government. It is the proper role of government. It's not the proper role of the president because the Congress spends the money. So he can build all the statues he wants to himself, and that's a violation of the Constitution. He can't spend money that hasn't been authorized by the Congress. He doesn't believe that.
Well, aesthetics is a big conversation in libertarian circles because you're probably familiar with Soviet architecture, right? Brutalism. And brutalism, when you see these buildings in Washington, D.C., they represent this kind of Soviet communist era of these aesthetics that are, you know, non-aspirational. They're very oppressive. The architecture of not the FBI building, but there's several buildings in Washington, D.C. that are these cold gray concrete slabs. If Congress is to appropriate funds to create government buildings, is it appropriate that they draw upon aesthetics that create a kind of civilizational aspiration, or is it better that they sort of adhere to a minimalist, low budget, fiscally conservative, gray concrete block sort of architecture?
I don't think the federal government's going to be around much longer, so they probably should watch the money that they spend.
Well, that is the question, right? Because if you're a fiscal conservative, then, you know, put them in an outhouse for all we care, as long as they can get the job done. But some people believe it's important for us to have these national monuments.
Yeah,
Do you?
well, look, the Ronald Reagan building, which is the third largest building in Washington, D.C., is truly magnificent, and it's in that grand Jeffersonian style. It's empty. There's nothing in it. It's a total colossal waste by conservative Republicans that wanted to honor Ronald Reagan. He himself would have condemned the idea. When the government spends other people's money, and it's always other people's money, the government doesn't produce any wealth. We know that. South Dakota once owned a cement plant that had a minimal profit, but for the most part, government doesn't produce any wealth. They don't care. They just don't care. And if you're Donald Trump, you want this to glorify yourself.
Judge,
which will be changed when he leaves office.
Judge Andrew Napolitano is the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which you can download on any of your mobile devices. Who do you have coming up on your show, Judge?
I have a very interesting guy, Robert Barnes, a lawyer with tremendous contacts inside the White House. He's the one that spilled the beans that J.D. Vance was against the war in Iran until the last very minute. He'll be on with me at 1:15 today, Professor Glenn Deason thereafter, and Phil Giraldi after that.
Read the judge
tomorrow. Colonel Douglas McGregor.
You can read the judge's column about Section 702 weekly on Thursdays at judgenap.com. Judge, thank you for always being here with us and being the light, the true north light. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Austin. All the best. Safe travels.
Thank you very much. Bye.
But it was virtually unarmed, and it was sent to observe the six-day war going on in the Middle East between Israel and its neighbors. It arrived on June 7th, and the weather was clear. The planes came out to meet them, to investigate, and then on the next day, on June 8th, they started the day. The visibility was unlimited. The American flag was flying proudly on the USS Liberty. More planes came from Israel to surveil the boat, the ship. And they thought they were in good shape, but what happened next surprised them all. French Mirage jets showed up, and for 25 minutes, strafed and attacked the USS Liberty. They shot rockets. They shot 30-millimeter cannons into the hull and into the ship. They even dropped napalm on the bridge of the ship. This was an effort to kill everybody on board. There was no intention of taking prisoners. After the 25 grueling minutes of attack on this virtually unarmed ship, and they thought things were over and they could recover, the torpedo boats showed up, 3 torpedo boats. They launched 4 torpedoes. One of them hit the hull of the USS Liberty.
We're going to take a quick break, guys. When we come back, Tom Pappert joins us to talk about Thomas Massie's USS Liberty speech, why this story still has so much power nearly 60 years later, and how to honor dead American sailors without turning every hard question about Israel into a conspiracy carnival. Stay with us.
you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than
well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian.
And always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
The left in America tells us not to have kids to save the planet, but in Cuba, they stopped having kids because the state destroyed the earth.
Collectivism doesn't create justice. It creates shortages, corruption, and power for the few. I've not just seen it, I've lived it. My family escaped it. Now, the same failed ideas are being sold to a new generation. I'm here to expose the lie and defend liberty. From Cuba to Argentina to the United States, the freedom movement is rising. Cafecito Libre is the exile voice of economic truth. Cafecito Libre, premiering March 3rd as part of the For Liberty Network, only on Rumble.
"'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again. George Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them." Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com.
In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.
Hark! I've discovered a brew so bold, 'twill ignite the spirit of liberty. This is not merely coffee, 'tis the very essence of American boldness. Give me coffee, or give me death. Go to For Liberty Shop to procure yours now.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's.
5 people instantly. It blew a 40-foot by 40-foot hole in the side of this ship. They were intent on sinking it. But they were also intent on not having a single survivor. According to eyewitness accounts, the Israelis machine-gunned the lifeboats that they put down. They machine-gunned the firefighters who were on the deck. They were bringing the wounded and the dead to the mess hall to triage them. They had one doctor who was trying to help them all, put a few stitches in. It was harrowing, and it's amazing If not for that crew, that boat would have sunk that day. But it still wasn't over. Helicopters showed up, combat helicopters. And the USS Liberty, even though their signals were being jammed by the Israelis, got a signal out. And there were ships that tried to respond. The USS Saratoga, the USS America sent planes, both of them sent planes to help the USS Liberty. And something happened that's never happened before. A ship under attack, the planes were recalled. This has never happened before. And they sat there for 17.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show, and we're on the 4 Liberty Network. Glad to have you here. Tom Pappert joins us now, recurring contributor to the show. One of the few people who can walk into a story like this without immediately reaching for the pre-made team jersey. He's an independent thinker, talking about Thomas Massie, who went to the House floor on the 59th anniversary of the USS Liberty attack with survivors watching from the gallery. He's calling for new investigation into why 34 Americans were killed, 170 were wounded, and the official story has long been one of mistaken identity. Massie says the survivors deserve better than that. Tom Pappert, good to see you again, Tom.
Happy to be here, Michael. Happy to be here, Austin. And happy to be here to discuss such a tragic story, but such a strange development for the retiring Congressman Thomas Massie to make this his sort of raison d'etre on his way out the door, perhaps a little bit late to be getting so much of the accolades that he's receiving for it, but nonetheless, a very important topic.
Yes, definitely an important topic. When American soldiers are killed, it's a historic event, something that we should absolutely discuss. You know, Massie's on the House floor yesterday. The survivors were in the gallery, and he says Congress has ignored these men for 59 years. So before we get to Israel and foreign policy and all of this online war, Tom, be honest, what does this moment look like to you?
This moment of this 59-year-old issue coming back up. Well, Austin, I think what's really going on here is there is a desire to create a wedge. The Republican Party under President Trump, regardless of whether you like the fact or not, is ascendant. I think all of President Trump's endorsed candidates have won this year, except 2. One was a state senator in like Idaho or something along those lines, and the rest, the second one was, of course, the TPUSA endorsed candidate that recently won over Trump's endorsed candidate. I think that is going to be the model. And so you have folks like Thomas Massie who are trying to figure out what can they do to differentiate themselves, because they have what I believe are personal agreements with the president and the majority of Republicans that are now at least going along with the MAGA agenda, if not being MAGA Republicans. And so the consensus is that libertarian policy is no longer enough. That is no longer enough to just disagree with the administration on monetary policy, on gold, on the proper use of tariffs, etc. No, now we need a new cudgel. Right now on TikTok, the anti-Semite and general agnosticism toward Israel is going viral. Therefore, that must now be a major part of libertarian thinking. And the Republicans dealt with this, by the way, in the last century. They had big meetings about it in the 60s. And at the end of the day, they all decided that it was not a good look for the party and they didn't want it. But there are certain voters there, and I think the Thomas Massie contingent wants them.
Okay, well, so Massie didn't say just honor the crew. It wasn't just about honoring the survivors of this event. He went so far as to say that the official story that this was an accident due to mistaken identity, he says that doesn't hold up. And what he's pointing to here is the survivor testimony. He says the American flag was visible, that there was previous Israeli reconnaissance that was done, and that the claim, and he also claimed that lifeboats and communications were targeted. So do you think he proved anything, or did he only allege?
Well, I think he restated a lot of the claims that have come out. He didn't add some certain elements to it, like some of the commissions that he's referenced are not government commissions, they're independent commissions that are affiliated with the survivors, et cetera. So some of the information that he brought into it, in other words, may be sort of colored. but he also neglected to include information. In 2003, for example, it was revealed through NSA declassified briefs that Israel, once they realized this was an American ship and what they had done, they immediately sent helicopters and began looking for American survivors. So they were instantly involved in the recovery effort. There's also been some data that's come out showing, for example, that there was, the day before the incident, the attack, there was some information that this could have been an American ship, but it never made it to the Israeli high command because it was 1967. And as you might imagine, Israel's communication infrastructure was not what it is today. It was not a modern state. Something else that Thomas Massie did not explain, and I hate to say it, but none of the people who still talk about the USS Liberty in 2026 have ever explained, is what was the motivation? Israel at this point in time was winning the war against Egypt. The United States was modifying its policy on Israel day by day in real time to become more friendly and start supplying weapons and munition. So was the thought process that this was a false flag, that Israel wanted America to join in its war against Egypt? Well, why is that necessary? They were already winning. Is the argument that these sailors knew something about Israel and they had to be snuffed out? Well, this is macabre, and I'm not denigrating these lost sailors' lives. I mean, these are American patriots and heroes, but there were something like 294 people on that vessel. Just over 30 lost their lives, 170 some were wounded. So if the Israelis were just trying to commit a war crime to cover up their earlier war crimes, they were also unsuccessful. It seems as though the fact that the Israeli government has offered restitution and I believe public apologies to the families, or I hope I'm not getting that wrong, I think this is what everybody has been saying it is for most of the last 50, 60 years, Austin, 59 years now, and that is that this was a terrible, tragic, and unfortunate incident. And you know what I've heard since Thomas Massie has brought this up? What I've learned is that there have been a lot of friendly fire incidents with other allies. There's been friendly fire incidents with the British during the more recent wars of Bush's adventurism in the Middle East. There were similar incidents in the 1980s with Middle Eastern countries that are now considered our allies. And I just find it peculiar, again, that Massie, on his way out the door, he's done virtually nothing for 15 years, and now he leaves, and suddenly this is his raison d'etre.
Yeah, it is suspicious timing. Yeah, and it's, in terms of a false flag, I mean, do these people believe that the Israelis would be able to cover up that they did this, or that the United States wouldn't find out that Israelis did it, or would they try to blame it on the Egyptians? It kind of assumes that the Americans are stupid and they wouldn't be able to determine who it was that did this. So the official position is that this was a tragic case of mistaken identity in the fog of war. And I've listened to debates with survivors of the USS Liberty, and I've read the testimony. I frankly love conspiracy theories. 99% of them are bullshit, but I just really because what I really love to do is to try and find the truth of the matter. And the truth is that the Israelis did kill American sailors. The Israelis did attack an American ship, and that it is a tragedy. But there seems to be this desire to try and paint Israel as a modern day antagonist to American interests, as if that incident proves that the Israelis have hated us all along, which doesn't really hold merit, considering that it's the Arab nations surrounding them that are constantly antagonists to the United States. And I was more an agnostic when it came to Israeli foreign policy. I used to be a little bit more like, a neutrality on these things. But I've really been convinced by the arguments that people like Ayn Rand and specifically Javier Milei have made from the sort of libertarian pro-Western civilization argument in favor of Israel versus their opponents. I used to be, again, more of the neutral style of libertarian, but I don't really believe that anymore, because I actually think that there is such a thing as the red-green alliance, which is this communist Islamist axis of evil, which wants to destroy the United States specifically, which is, of course, against our own interests, but that Israel in many ways stands between us and the barbarian savages at our gates. So I guess, Massie's critics are saying that, this isn't about the USS Liberty anymore, that this is Massie playing to the Tucker Candace anti-Israel internet. They're giving, life to a decades-old conspiracy theory. I personally think that that's a fair hit because having known what the libertarian movement has become in the last 20 years, it has gone from a movement if I were Thomas Massie and it was my last day, a few days in Congress, I'd probably go hog on problems that actually still matter to the American citizens today. Maybe the Federal Reserve, inflation. This is just me, maybe the spending. You could go after the massive spending. There's plenty to criticize the Trump administration on, like you said, on tariffs from a libertarian perspective. But there does seem to be this special hatred for Israel that I found amongst libertarians that's this sort of obnoxious, and I call it bigotry, but not because I'm like some lefty, but it's just because what usually happens with people who have irrational bigotry is that they're incapable of being objective. And I really value objective views and values. And I don't really see that much from libertarians. And I actually think that lack of capability to be objective is what has, caused Massie to engage in his own form of self-destruction over the last couple of years. Is that an accurate assessment or analysis as somebody who comes from you come from the conspiracy world just like I do, Tom. Is that an accurate analysis? And what's made you sort of change and take a similar path to myself, would you say?
Well, Austin, I remember in 2012, I was just a little whippersnapper. I think I was 17 years old. I couldn't vote in the Republican primary, but I could vote in the general election. And I voted for Gary Johnson, but the entire campaign season, I was going to the grassroots local, my city for Ron Paul meetings. Mm-hmm. And so that is my start into politics. Really, it was through Ron Paul. And I would challenge everybody to go back and watch Dr. Paul's farewell speech to Congress and just be amazed by how libertarianism has changed in the past 14 years. Israel was mentioned in that speech once toward the end. And it was about the foreign aid that goes to Israel. It was not, the Zionists control Congress, and now that I'm retiring, it's all over. It's just going to be Jew run from. No, that's not what Dr. Ron Paul was about. That's not what libertarianism was about. And as you said, Austin, there are real arguments to be had. I would side with the president, frankly. I think that we have to outgrow the debt. I think that is our best strategy. But on spending, that should be the debate where Thomas Massie can come forward. But he was frankly unable to make that argument to explain why the big, beautiful bill was bad, despite it accomplishing about 80 to 85% of Trump's agenda. And so instead he pivoted, and he pivoted toward the Epstein administration, which of course has since been merged with this nebulous concept of Israel bad. And as I said, to the average person who is just tuning into libertarianism for the first time, the people who would be like me, a 17, 18-year-old back in 2012, tuning in today, well, you would think that libertarianism has not that much to do with economics. It's kind of that general fiscal conservative, spending is bad. The main thing about libertarianism, if you were to watch that speech that Massie gave, was that, they really don't like Israel. And that is a bizarre political position to me, to make your primary reason for existing as a party, as a candidate, etc.
Yeah, they've gotten one-shotted by leftist propaganda that's kind of snuck its way in through the anti-war message. And it's a shame because, like you say, libertarianism has a lot to offer in terms of its actual ideology and philosophy. But, what we've seen with the defenestration of Professor Walter Block from the Mises Institute, he made the classical liberal case for Israel from a property rights perspective, and they kicked him out. The most, one of the biggest libertarian scholars, because he made an argument that went against the sort of identitarian politics that has overrun the libertarian movement, which is, it's fascinating because you'll have prominent libertarians that will have so much more in common with code code pink leftist communists and far, whatever you want to call them, wing fascists like Nick Fuentes, they have so much more in common than with free market, classical, liberal, limited government types than myself. So there's this strange horseshoe theory that's experiencing Tom. And I am in an awkward position, Tom, of having to, I guess, dismiss a significant portion of my audience, put myself into the wilderness for the simple fact that I'm unable to follow this sort of conspiracy crew off of the cliff, follow the code pink, like to follow, like if I think that there's a problem with being endorsed by the Young Turks, if I think there's a problem with standing arm in arm with communists like Ro Khanna, I'm the problem. I'm not the real libertarian. But if I follow Javier Milei and his logic, and I say, yeah, we should fight the left and never give shit leftards an inch, then I'm a Zionist. You know, I'm carrying water for a foreign. They never call me a foreign shill when I shill for Javier Milei. But if I I suggest that Israel should kill people who want to, kill the Americans, then I'm a Zionist shill. What should I do, Tom? I mean, is it just time to abandon the libertarian project in the United States entirely in your mind, or what do you think?
Well, I think that it is so important that people like you continue to express real libertarian ideas, like Walter Block. I mean, I remember watching debates with that guy, with Stefan Molyneux, when I was like, I guess 17, 18 years old during that same period. So yes, these are the real heavy hitters. I would have said Thomas Woods, but now he's kind of gone crazy as well.
Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? Tom Woods has become what he always railed against. He's like Rachel Maddow now. His Trump derangement syndrome has turned him into like a libertarian Rachel Maddow.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, it's become to the point of parody of what I watched the guy give a speech in 2013, and it's like he is a parody of the person that he was back then.
Never meet your heroes. Never meet your heroes.
Never meet your. That's right. But I think it is so important that we have libertarians like you. But I do think that the organized libertarian political movement as it existed from about, 2008 to 2016, that is over. I think that now the main opportunity, and it's going to be a rebuilding process for all involved, because the MAGA Republicans are having the same exact thing play out as well. But I think that on behalf of the MAGA Republicans, Austin, I am extending the handshake and welcoming you. We need the libertarian instinct. We need you to be part of us. And at the same time, we need you to help us purge our problem. Because yes, I used to be nice to people like Nick Fuentes. And I used to see him as a young kid that was getting canceled by the Rhino establishment, not unlike myself. I think he's like 2 or 3 years younger than me. And so I thought, this kid's really got something. I was nice to him right up until 2022 came along. And he endorsed Adolf Hitler with Kanye West in a GIMP mask on InfoWars. And at some point, you have to draw the line. At some point, that's where I think the libertarians are as well.
Well, I'm glad that Adolf Hitler was the line and not when he endorsed Kamala Harris and tried to stop Donald Trump from getting elected. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm speaking to my good friend Tom Pappert here. We're both right-wingers, but we're not insane. We don't endorse Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin. At this point, I think for a lot of these people, like I don't believe that Alex Jones believes what he's saying a lot of the times. I think with a lot of these people, it becomes audience capture, Tom, because if you change your mind, if you're in this business and you do what we do, and you build an audience, like say I've built an audience around libertarians and libertarianism, if you ever change your mind or start to go off the beaten path, it makes sense. These people, they're formulated around a certain set of ideals. They're like, okay, well, he's not advocating those ideals, it's time to go. But when you are completely locked into your audience and this as a job and as a career, and like I am, I'm just willing to take the risk of jettisoning some of the more toxic elements of this movement. But people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly and Nick Fuentes and Alex Jones, they are captured by their audiences. They have no other options. They have nowhere to go. And I think it's if I'm going to be humble myself here to some extent, I've never achieved the kind of fame that Megyn Kelly or Tucker Carlson have. For them, it must be like a level of like heroin addiction that they have to attention that I don't have or need or something. I'm perfectly fine with making the money that I make and living the lifestyle I live, but they're used to hanging out with Trump. They're used to having huge audiences. Alex Jones is used to having a massive studio. So even if they don't believe what they say, and I think most of them don't believe what they say, maybe Candace Owens actually believes all the retarded shit she spews, but I think that probably most of them, Tom, they're probably just addicted like a heroin addict to the audience capture and to the attention. Is that a fair analysis, or am I being hyperbolic?
I think that's fair, and I think that I would add to it, because there's a concept floating around on the internet right now called Podcastistan, and it's the same. It's based on the fact that, I mean, if you look at all these podcasts, on Tuesday Tucker will interview Megyn Kelly, on Wednesday Megyn Kelly will interview Tucker, on Thursday Tucker will interview Buckley Carlson, on Friday Megyn will bring on. But it's the same 10 people interviewing the same 10 people over and over and over again, and this all reminds me of back in the day when I had a Discord server. And then I didn't really pay attention to it, but I had people joining it, probably not unlike yours, but I didn't have good moderators. And lo and behold, a couple of months later, I go and I checked on this Discord server, and it had been, there was a contingent of these alt-righters who really didn't like Israel, and they were talking about it a lot. And I'm a free speech absolutist. I said, okay, that's fine. I didn't check on the Discord server for another couple months. I come back, it's just the 4 anti-Semites talking about how much they hate the Jews over and over and over again. That is what's going to happen. That's what always happens. It's the beginning of time. If you have a comment section and you let those sort of comments be expressed, it's not an anti-free speech thing. It's a human nature thing.
It's antisocial.
Eventually, those are the only comments you get.
Exactly.
That's what's going to happen in Podcastistan.
Exactly. It's the antisocial nature of those people, right? Like, so in other words, it's important for us to exclude, right? We talk about freedom of speech, but we should also be inherently exclusionary. It's the same kind of like leftist attitude that lets homeless people do drugs in an open air drug market in Seattle. You don't want to allow these people to control the conversation, because they will inevitably, with their antisocial behavior, deliberately drive out anyone. It's why the Libertarian Party, the open borders stance of the Libertarian Party has destroyed the Libertarian Party, because they've allowed all of these toxic people to come in, and eventually what they do is they crowd out all of the normal people. So, I'm building a wing of the liberty movement that I kind of call it liberty for normies. I mean, libertarian nationalism, whatever you want to call it. But, we need to make libertarianism safe for normal people, and we need to viciously and sometimes even violently chase the bullies out of our circles, because they make life miserable for everyone else, and we should not be subject, just like the majority should not tyrannize the minority. We shouldn't be tyrannized by the minority, right? It's like the trans people forcing these bathroom bills on the rest of us. All of these toxic, weirdo, alt-righter, Groyper adjacent, Candace conspiracy cult people. We should chase them away, because I don't care if there's the majority of them. Majority of them are probably in Pakistan. But Tom, I want to give you the opportunity. And the rest of them are the reason why the 19th Amendment must be repealed. Tom, please share with us what's been going on in your world. Where can people follow you online? I guess probably not that Discord server, but what are you promoting these days for people to follow?
Now, that Discord server got me banned from Discord. In fact, I say you will not officially find me on Discord at all whatsoever. I no longer have an account under my name. Recently, I've been uncovering what appears to be the next major spending controversy that borders on corruption and like possibly some legal terms that I shouldn't throw around in the city of Nashville. They're throwing millions and millions of dollars, $3.7 million in the last contract, another $1.5 million coming up in later this month, toward refugee resettlement, toward immigrant lawyers, everything you can imagine for a sanctuary city. They're just funding it through nonprofits. That way people don't know it's a sanctuary city. So if you want to find out about that, Follow me on X at Real Tom Pappert, and you can read my work at the Tennessee Star, TennesseeStar.com. Austin, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure. I hope that your more libertarian fans appreciate the olive branch from the MAGA Republican representative here.
We'll take it. We're in the desert. We're thirsty. Thanks for the drink of water, Tom. We appreciate you. Let's talk again when I get back from vacation. You have a good week.
You do the same.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys for unlocking the bonus content as well. Thank you so much. We appreciate you very much. Kermode Bear just went over there and bought himself a bunch of Founding Flavors coffee. Hope you guys appreciate it. We're going to play the bonus content for you guys. And don't forget, no show tomorrow or Friday. We're out for a few days. It's time for us to have a little rest and relaxation. Think about anything but Israel and Thomas Massie and libertarianism and politics and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we're going to hit the grift off in the next 5 minutes, but if we do, then I will come back. We'll play the mini game, and then I'll say goodbye. Otherwise, enjoy the mini documentary, guys, and we'll see you right back again here next Monday on the Wake Up America show and the For Liberty Network.
In the rugged frontier hills of Franklin County, Pennsylvania, in the year 1751, a girl named Margaret Cochran was born into a world of hardship and danger. She grew up fast on the edge of the wilderness. When she was just 5 years old, her father was killed by raiding Indians, and her mother was carried off, never to be seen again. Young Margaret was raised by an uncle, learning to work as hard as any man on the farm. At 21, she married a young man named John Corbin. They settled near Philadelphia and seemed destined for an ordinary life. But in 1775, the winds of revolution began to blow. When John enlisted in the Continental Army as an artilleryman, Margaret refused to stay behind. She became one of the thousands of brave camp followers who marched with the troops, cooking meals, washing clothes, nursing the wounded, and enduring the same brutal conditions as the soldiers. By the fall of 1776, the war had turned desperate. The British had captured New York and were pushing toward Philadelphia. On November 16, 1776, the Americans made a last-stand defense at Fort Washington on the heights above the Hudson River. It was one of the bloodiest and most hopeless battles of the entire war. Margaret Corbin stood beside her husband at his cannon on the fort's rampart. The British attacked in overwhelming force, over 8,000 redcoats and Hessians, supported by heavy naval guns on the river. Cannonballs and grape shot tore through the American lines. Smoke choked the air. Men fell by the dozens. John Corbin loaded and fired his piece as fast as he could. Then a British cannonball struck him directly in the chest, killing him instantly. He collapsed beside the gun. The rest of the crew panicked and began to run. Margaret did not run. She stepped over her husband's body, grabbed the rammer staff from his dead hands, and shouted, "I will take his place." Alone, she loaded, rammed, and fired the cannon again and again. British musket balls whistled past her head. Grape shot ripped through the air around her. She kept working the gun with the strength and fury of a seasoned gunner. For what seemed like an eternity, she stood in the smoke and flame, firing into the advancing redcoats. Then disaster struck. A burst of grape shot slammed into her left side and arm. The impact shattered her shoulder, tore through her chest, and nearly severed her arm. Blood poured down her dress. Most men would have fallen and died on the spot. Margaret Corbin stayed on her feet, still trying to load the cannon until she finally collapsed from loss of blood. The fort fell that day. It was a crushing American defeat. Nearly 3,000 patriots were killed or captured. But in the middle of that slaughter, one woman had stood where her husband fell and kept his cannon speaking until she could no longer stand. The surviving soldiers who witnessed her courage never forgot it. Margaret was carried from the field and eventually taken to a hospital in Philadelphia. She survived, but her left arm was permanently crippled, and she would carry the scars and pain for the rest of her life. Congress recognized her extraordinary bravery. In 1779, they voted her a military pension, half the pay of a soldier for life. She became the first woman in American history to receive a pension for direct combat service. The soldiers began calling her Captain Molly. After the war, she lived quietly in Pennsylvania and later New York, still suffering from her wounds. She died on January 16, 1800, at the age of 48. She was buried with military honors. Margaret Corbin was never a general. She never led armies. She was a frontier girl, a soldier's wife, and a camp follower who refused to run when the cannon needed firing. On the blood-soaked heights of Fort Washington, when her husband fell and the line began to break, she stepped forward and became one of the revolution's unlikeliest heroes. She proved that courage is not measured by size or gender, but by the willingness to stand in the face of certain death and keep fighting. In the smoke and thunder of that desperate November day, Margaret Corbin showed the world what a woman could do when liberty itself was on the line. Her story is not as famous as Molly Pitcher's, but her sacrifice came first, and her courage was every bit as real. From the Pennsylvania frontier to the cannon's roar at Fort Washington, Margaret Corbin stood tall when it mattered most. She earned the name Captain Molly not by command, but by blood and bravery. And every time the story of American women in the fight for independence is told, the ghost of Margaret Corbin stands beside that smoking cannon, rammer in hand, refusing to yield.
You guys are going to make me late for my flight. It's time for a great grift off. In honor of the remake of Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, one of the greatest video games ever made, today's great grift off is the Legend of Zelda Trivia Party Mix. So guys, get in here quick because I got to get in here. It's time for us to get this grift off started right now. Let's go. Crowdparty.app. We're going to get you guys in here quick. We did it. Head over to crowdparty.app. Let's get this game started. I got to get to the airport, all right? I don't have time to mess around. Let's get this game started right now. Crowdparty.app. Type in the code 18819. I'm not screwing around. I'm not waiting around. I got to get in a van. I got to get my family and all my bags in the van. So get your butt in here. I don't care if it's only 2 players. I will start this game in 30 seconds. So let's go to crowdparty.app, crowdparty.app, type in that code 18819. We're doing the grift off. I got 6 players so far. Come on, man. Get in here. Get in here, Drew. Get in here now. Let's go. All right. 30-second countdown begins now. Here we go. The game will begin. And let's go. Let's play. What is the name of the main protagonist in most Legend of Zelda games? Ooh, somebody's gonna mess this up. Oh, only one person got it right? Oh my God. Round 6. Ooh, 3 got that one right. Good one. This is fun. Dun, 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 dun. Round 10 of 12. 11. Matthew, Norris, Hunter's Crack Pipe, first, second, and third. In A Link to the Past, where does Link find the Master Sword? Oh. Perfect timing for the dubstep remix. Lost Woods. And this is the Lost Woods song that you're hearing right now, actually. Here we go. Last round. Oh, nobody got it. Wow. Matthew. Congratulations, Matthew. You are the winner. Matthew, here is how you can collect your prize. Send us a text, 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. Matthew, you got to send us your name, and we'll send you your $20 gift card to the Grift Shop. Thank you, Andy Opperman, and thank you to everyone who gave us so generously. Thank you, Jonathan Morris. Thank you, Quest, and all of you, Drew Van Runkle, everybody. Thank you so much for all you've done for us. We'll see you guys right back again here next Monday. I got to get on that flight. See you later.
I've discovered a brew so bold, 'twill ignite the spirit of liberty. This is not merely coffee, 'tis the very essence of American boldness. Give me coffee.